From the 22nd to the 23rd of October, a special select committee in the House of Lords heard oral evidence from expert witnesses on Kim Leadbeater's terminally ill adults end-of-life bill. It's fair to say the sessions threw up more than a few interesting moments. Not least of all, pro-bill members of the committee being unable to put aside their activism and asking blatantly leading or inappropriate questions. The witnesses also highlighted yet more flaws in this sloppily written bill. I'm William Curry, and this is Viewpoint. For starters, the sponsors let the cat out of the bag that at the heart of this bill is actually the idea of radical autonomy. The committee heard first from Kim Leadbeater MP, who introduced the bill in the Commons, and Lord Falconer of Thoroton, who is steering it through the Lords. What is the reason that these two politicians are bringing this bill forward? You would be forgiven for thinking that they aim to prevent terrible suffering at the end of life. After all, Lord Falconer began his speech in the second reading debate by referring to Lucy Davenport's husband, Tom, who had an agonising death from bile duct cancer. The debates in the Commons were full of stories of people suffering. Baroness Finlay, therefore, reasonably asked, "This bill has been promoted on the basis of a solution to severe pain and suffering. You have spoken about other countries, other jurisdictions that do include suffering in their legal definition. Why did you choose to not mention either pain or suffering anywhere in your qualifying conditions?" The response from Lord Falconer was, first of all, on suffering, the essence of the bill is autonomy. You have a choice. We did not take the view that it is appropriate to have as a condition the suffering of an individual, which is a subjective matter. Once you satisfy that requirement, obviously, the safeguards have to be complied with. That is the essence of the bill. It is autonomy. That's the first cat out of the bag. This is not about suffering, as the bill has been sold, but about a radical idea of autonomy. The other was the shocking lack of concern for people with disabilities. Lord Falconer made the highly questionable claim that there is absolutely no evidence from abroad that there is a particular problem in relation to disabled people, and carried on to say, in relation to people with various learning difficulties or autism, again, with proper assistance, they too can have that option. In other words, assisted death. In addition, the bill sponsors continued the trend of misleading about what's actually in the bill. Lord Falconer said that Clause 5 requires doctors to make sure all options are made available. There is no such requirement. The clause only refers to a duty to discuss options. Kim Leadbeater rejected an amendment in committee to guarantee a meeting with a palliative care specialist. Falconer also claimed that practically everybody who has looked at this issue has found palliative care goes up where it's introduced. This is misleading. The biggest recent study, cited by the Association for Palliative Medicine, concluded assisted suicide is impeding the development of palliative care. On a question about people in Oregon citing being a burden as a reason for choosing assisted suicide, he said that the reasons given are, first of all, a lack of autonomy, secondly, a lack of dignity, and thirdly, pain and suffering. The item that you refer to, feeling a burden, is, I think, 6th or 7th, and is one of a number of items. Again, this is simply not true. Oregon's Death with Dignity Act annual data summary has routinely recorded feelings of being a burden on family, friends, or caregivers within the top 5 end-of-life concerns. Between half or nearly half of all those receiving a lethal prescription in each of the last 5 years have cited this as a reason for seeking a premature death. This issue has been consistently ranked higher than inadequate pain control. In 2024, 42% expressed this concern, as opposed to 34% for pain control. You may have been aware that the decriminalisation of suicide in 1961, on the grounds that you cannot prosecute someone who has committed suicide, and prosecuting someone who attempts it is clearly unhelpful and uncompassionate, did not create a right to suicide. Why would we have suicide prevention measures if it were a right? Baroness Hayter, however, seemed genuinely shocked when former Chief Coroner Thomas Teague, KC, explained this to her. You'd think that someone examining a bill that amends the Suicide Act might look up what the current law on it is. So many questions remain unanswered. The second evidence session on Thursday was especially interesting, with evidence from Thomas Teague and from Dr. Susie Lishman, lead on medical examiners at the Royal College of Pathologists. I personally learnt a lot about the role of medical examiners, who now routinely examine all deaths from a medical point of view, and coroners, who investigate any deaths with a suspected unnatural element. The bill is seeking to obfuscate the fact that deaths under the bill would be suicides by not classing them as unnatural and so not referring them to the coroner. Dr. Leishman explained that if a death is not referred to the coroner, they would automatically come under the medical examiners. However, they are not mentioned at all in the bill. This leads to many questions that the bill does not answer. Will medical examiners receive extra training to take on examining assisted deaths? Where patients have not told their families of their plans, will the medical examiners have to be the first to tell them that their loved one has died by assisted suicide? Will they have access to documents from the panel that approves assisted deaths? As they do not have any legal investigative role, how will they determine on matters like coercion? Will they even have enough information to refer to the coroner if necessary? Could they essentially be trained to act as a coroner? If that's necessary, why not just stick to the normal procedure and involve the coroner? A final key takeaway is that medical and care bodies still have serious concerns about the bill. Dr. Annabel Price reiterated the Royal College of Psychiatrists' position that they cannot support this bill, despite being neutral on the principle. The Royal College of GPs insist that they don't want it to be part of general medicine. Damningly, in fact, their representative, Dr. Mulholland, said that the whole question of making decisions for assisted dying is against everything that I have been trained in, and I've practiced for 30 plus years. Professor Mumtaz Patel from the Royal College of Physicians expressed her fears that people would opt for an assisted death because of a lack of palliative care options. Luke Gogan of the British Association of Social Workers expressed a similar view, saying, "Social care in this country is in crisis. If you're not getting the care services and support services which you're entitled to, an assisted death may be something which you wouldn't have considered otherwise." Overall then, it was a pretty damning advertisement for this bill, and its supporters' treatment of the well-reasoned concerns put forward by expert witnesses exposed their increasing desperation. Emotive stories can take the argument so far, but the more detailed scrutiny this bill gets, the more flaws are revealed. All we can do is hope that peers are listening.